Back with another video from one of our content creator goats, just in terms of content quality. We have a video from the dog Pint is here on how emotions define great power systems. You know what I'm saying? You could look towards Naruto, which makes sense. They describe chakra as like a mixture of the physical, like power or strength with like spiritual power. So like emotions would be tied to that. Shows like Dragon Ball, your ki exploding with anger, all types of things. You know what I'm saying? But we're gonna hear our dog Pint surgically break down how this works. And yeah, as always, I'm gonna pre-fire a little like. And if you're subbed, I recommend turning on the notifications so you don't miss a video. Discord community is linked down in the description below. You should check that out so you're notified every time we go live on YouTube, every time we post on YouTube, and every time we go live on Twitch. You'll also be able to talk to fellow community members, stack up them channel points if you hop into the Twitch streams, and be able to gamble on predicts, allegedly. Let's hop straight into it though.
How do you depict strength in a power system? For most stories, the answer is simple. Bigger muscles, faster punches, or louder screaming.
Yeah,
if your characters want to hit harder, they just, well, train harder. But what if strength wasn't limited to physicality?
Mob was fire.
What if the limits of power in your series weren't just based on physical attributes, but also mental attributes as well? That is to say, what if you had an emotion-based power system? Emotion-based power systems are those where your strength doesn't just grow with physical training, but also your mental state. Whether it's willpower, fear, or hate.
He knows ball. Cause my nigga Seymour walk is down. Shout out Gurren Lagann.
Your emotional condition isn't just part of your characterization, it's also a source of strength. These are the types of power systems where going to therapy might actually make you weaker, where the most powerful guy in the room is also the one with several years of childhood trauma. And these systems are some of my absolute favorites in fiction, because they don't just make fights cooler, they also make them very personal. When used,
and I think that makes them more like interesting and narratively compelling, because there's like something at stake. There's a theme being pushed, some overarching narrative besides just fists and sweat being flung.
Right. An author can use emotions as the very basis of their power system, meaning the same anger or fear that drives a character's decisions can also be used to fuel their abilities. And that synchronization between what a character feels and what they can achieve creates some of the most breathtaking and heartbreaking spectacles in anime. Because emotions aren't consistent. They spike, crash, and spiral. And so these battles aren't just about who is stronger, they're also about who will fall apart first. And that is exactly the kind of unpredictability that gives us fights that leave you gaping at your screen. So how do you build an emotion-based power system that actually feels satisfying? What are the best examples of this in anime, and what separates a beautifully written emotional system from one that's as simple as, I'm angry, therefore I'm stronger? Well, in this video, that's exactly what we're going to find out. So stick around. You might just learn something important. Cursed energy is one of the few cases in which a power system seems very simple,
and I love that it's described as negative, and then negative when negative is positive. So
it's far deeper than it is given credit for. The main idea is that cursed energy is a spiritual force that leaks out of humans as a result of negative emotions. Everyone has it because to some capacity, everyone feels fear, anger, or grief.
Yeah, humans, because curses are a spawn of human emotion. So true, yeah.
The difference is that most people can't see it, while some very few can. It
also makes it slightly different from chakra, which is in everything. Like, that's life force. Cursed energy is not life force or like death force. It's just something that living beings, humans, can exhibit due to negative emotions.
Emotional leakage builds up, especially in places with heavy trauma or despair. It manifests physically as curses, malevolent spirits who exist solely to torment humanity. For Jujutsu sorcerers, mastery of this energy means learning to stop that leak, channel it, and use it for their own purposes. Putting it another way, you basically get to turn your childhood trauma into a laser beam. From a narrative perspective, cursed energy is the literal embodiment of the human shadow, the dark side of our emotions made visible. What is usually internalized and private becomes external and weaponized. The story consistently reinforces,
and that's expressed in people's different curse techniques, you know, what they are, how they operate, even how they look. Like, I remember when Todo was first introduced in the manga, he has like hearts. His curse energy is coming out in the shape of hearts. So it's like, it's very it's very varied, and I think a part of having emotions tied into your power system is it makes it very like personal, which allows for a lot of variation and inter- in- interesting dynamics amongst characters and betwixt different things and expressions of powers and how they truly work. Like, what's the force truly behind it?
Force is this. Unchecked negativity will manifest destructively. Think of Junpei Yoshino's arc. In many ways, Mahito is Junpei's curse, attracted to him due to his hatred and resentment of other human beings, and in the end is the cause for his self-destruction and loss of self.
Right.
And curses, at least the ones you actually have to worry about, don't just pop up anywhere. They're born in hospitals, schools, alleyways, places thick with collective fear and misery. Emotional negligence is very clearly framed as a communal hazard, because in real life, your negativity doesn't stop at hurting you. It also seeps out and hurts the people around you. And so, in this world, refusing...
And that's the narrative beauty of it. That's the fictional aspect. It becomes a creature, a thing that can cause harm, but in reality, it affects others intrapersonally, where your relationships are affected and people you don't know are affected. These ways you interact with them because of this unchecked trauma, this lack of reflection on who you are, is what causes this destruction. And that is an interesting part of the story's narrative, because that's something that Geto has to understand. Like, what's the difference between a sorcerer and a curse? There really is no difference. The sorcerer is similar to what Pint just said, is a great analogy. Stop that leakage of curse energy and harness it for themselves to fight curses. That is what they do. But how are they themselves not curses? By going through the trauma that they go through doing their job. They save people, so they're helping. They're not the bad guys. But yeah, to realize that, like, fundamentally there's no difference between us. And that is further, like, implied when Yuji is fighting Mahito and he says, I am you. We're the same. You know, we're two sides of the same coin. That makes us no different than each other. You have a penny. You don't say, oh yeah, this is the top side of the penny, this is the face of the penny, this is tails of the penny. No, you just address it as one penny. I am you. Obviously, there are nuances and differences there, but we are no different. And that's what Geto had to realize, and that's kind of what he represents. His trauma from seeing that girl die in front of him turned him into a villain, and in a way, like a curse, because he was like, I want to get rid of everybody who doesn't have curse energy. You know why? The people with curse energy are those who are able to utilize that negativity, which means if people with cursed energy people without cursed energy are gone, there are no more curses. So even though he's a bad guy because he's killing people, he's a good guy, but he's taking the extreme method of, I want to kill everyone who doesn't have cursed energy. And if everyone who doesn't have cursed energy is killed, the people that don't know how to regulate and like interact with these emotions are going to be dead, so there are no more curses. There's no more suffering from that point onward. That's his mindset. You know what I'm saying? And if everyone has cursed energy, it's going to be like the Jujutsu families, where like your kids are going to know what cursed energy is because you know what cursed energy is. Why wouldn't I teach them that? That's like the world he has to realize. What we're doing is pointless because we're protecting people, but we can't protect everybody. And as long as people are getting harmed, more curses will appear. There's no way to stop this. And that's why it's referred narratively in the series as a balance that has never been like checked. But his answer was, if I become a curse, like in my actions and my morality, while still being a human, I can like destroy that balance in a way. Because if you don't follow the path that you're set to go and you help the other side, you are now envision the yin yang thing. Instead of being black or white, you are now this small circle inside of this game that one half is black, one half is white. And with that, there's balance. There's no movement here. This stagnation that he's looking for is his like peace almost. This will make sure no more curses come. I don't have to save everybody, but in what I'm doing, everybody technically becomes saved.
To deal with your negative emotions is practically littering, except instead of plastic bottles and empty wrappers, you summon literal murder ghosts. Then comes one of the most defined and blatant expressions of this idea: the reverse curse technique. Cursed energy by default can only be used to destroy. It is formed from negative emotions after all. But once refined and inverted, it becomes positive cursed energy. The series, being a shonen of course, has to give a power system heavy explanation for this mechanic, akin to 4th grade math.
Right.
But very clearly, the symbolism here is that negative emotions, when truly understood and transformed, can go from something purely destructive to something restorative as well.
Yeah.
Gojo masters the reverse curse technique at the edge of death, not through brute.
And that's why JJK's power system is so perfect in what it's designed to do, because to unlock reverse curse technique, you're not born with it. It's not something that you have to inherently have. It's something that you obtain through understanding. And to obtain curse energy, you have to understand trauma. You have to undergo trauma. But to obtain RCT, you have to master it. And the fact that there's so few RCTs in the series shows that even if you didn't take Geto's approach and took the approach of teaching people curse energy and then teaching them RCT, it'd be almost impossible, because it's so difficult for people to understand. It's not supposed to be easy for people to understand their own trauma, to understand how it works, and then to go beyond that. Once you have access to this cursed energy, this trauma, multiply it upon itself to create this positive energy.
But by letting go, he transforms his feelings of confinement, arrogance, and constraint into freedom, clarity, and acceptance. It's only when he stops resisting the world, when he releases every tether, that he becomes something beyond it. And this ties back to how cursed energy isn't just about who has the most trauma or misery. The strongest sorcerers in the series clearly aren't the most depressed, they're the most disciplined. Gojo and Sukuna are both tragic, lonely figures, but their strength doesn't just come from their pain. It comes from their self-understanding.
Yeah.
Both characters have a very strong understanding of who they are,
what their
philosophy in life is, and how to perfectly channel the melancholy of the human condition into raw strength. Quantity matters for sure, but is a constant talking point about just how much sheer control both of these characters have over their cursed energy.
Not to mention, Todo is like he's useful in like the final arcs of the series. And Todo, when Hanami first meets him, someone way weaker than Sukuna, states, yo, this nigga's cursed energy is butt cheeks. He's low-key easy to squad wipe. And then him and Yuji cook her. So control and understanding of it is important. That's why someone like Todo has a win record as flawless as it is. Not just because, he jumps everything, right? But because he has his own philosophy, as delusional as it may be, and he follows through with it. And I think it is something the author is saying indirectly by him being the one who has a crazy win-loss ratio, right? Even Nanami's ability, like down to his curse technique, that was ingrained into his philosophy. That's why he was a top tier. You get what I'm saying? Mahito, he had to learn what it meant to be himself and to use his abilities. And in developing his philosophy, he unlocked his domain expansion. He just happened to get maxed out because he was fighting Sukuna. But in that understanding, he became so much stronger. And that happens again in his fight against Yuji, when he understands what his true purpose is, what it means for him to be an element of disaster.
In this way, the series points clearly to a message of emotional maturity. Negative emotions are simply potential energy. It's the refinement and understanding of them that turns them into real power. The most dangerous characters in the series aren't those who feel the most, they're the ones who understand themselves the most. Yuta, after coming to terms with what he's done to Rika. Gojo, after reawakening his new mindset as the Honored One. Yuji, after being reassured and set on the right track by Todo. Characters always show a massive moment of growth after an equally massive moment of self-realization and awareness. And this narrative symbol tracks all the way till the end of the series. Cursed energy reflects a simple, real-world truth. Negative emotions, if repressed or ignored, can destroy you, or even worse, spill out and harm the people you love. But if acknowledged and understood, they can become the fuel for growth, strength, and self-understanding. That's why Jujutsu Kaisen's power system resonates as much as it does. It's not just about hitting or punching harder. It's about turning inner chaos into a greater sense of purpose. Fear. In Chainsaw Man, fear isn't just a feeling. It's the very basis of the narrative itself. Every devil, Every battle, every ounce of power in that world exists because someone, somewhere, was scared of something. It's one of the most disturbingly clever power systems I've ever seen written, because it takes something universal and invisible and turns it into the basis of the setting. So
similar to JJK and the fact that like the cursed spirits are based off of negative energy, but here they choose just fear rather than it just being like trauma, like a blanket term. It's like, no, this is fear. The strongest devils are the ones that people have the most fear of, you know?
So here's how it works. In Chainsaw Man, every devil is born from human fear. The more people fear something, the stronger the devil becomes. So you've got the Gun Devil, born from humanity's obsession with mass violence. The Darkness Devil, the manifestation of humanity's oldest fears. And somewhere out there, the Tomato Devil, which I can only assume is born from that one friend who always removes the tomato from his burger. I'm looking at you, Tom. It's a natural hierarchy of terror. Primal fears and globally terrifying concepts create near godlike entities, while modern trivial fears create weaker devils. But what makes this system even more unsettling is the idea of...
You know what would be fire with Chainsaw Man? If you contract it with like a mid-tier devil, and instead of contracting with like your body or like your soul or anything of any importance, let's say you're like a celebrity and you have like a cult-like following, you just be like, yo, I'm gonna get people to massively be afraid of you. It's really evil, but like, hear me out. And like the devil would just become stronger, and because your contract's based off you supplying them power, instead of you like losing yourself, yeah, you lose like your humanity and morality. It's hypothetical, of course, but you would, in theory, be able to gain as much power as you need, because the stronger this devil becomes, the more damage it becomes. Like, say it's the fire devil, right? You just set things on fire everywhere. You know, all fires are breaking out more and more as the fear increase of this devil. It only becomes stronger, in theory.
Contracts. It's the classic human-devil contract dynamic. Humans can form pacts with devils in return for something precious. Maybe years of their life, like Aki and the Cursed Devil. Maybe senses or a body part, like Himeno and the Ghost Devil.
I think senses are fire. The problem is senses, losing pretty much any sense is almost like damning. Like losing, the one off the top of my head that's like the least damning is losing your sense of touch or taste. Either of those two. Every other one is just very like damning. Losing your sight, your whole, like the way you handle life is completely different. Unless you're like an anime character. Losing your hearing, same thing. If something's behind you, you can't detect it. Like the way our ears work, we can hear where something's coming from. We have like depth to our hearing, the way we have depth to our sight, right? What's the other one? Smell? Same concept. If something's on fire and you can't see it, and it's like far away to where you can't hear it, you also won't be able to smell it. You know what I'm saying? But the ones on top of the head that aren't as bad as like taste, but then food is just food. You're just eating it as fuel. It changes your dynamic with food entirely. And then touch is also just as bad, because you wouldn't know if something's hot or if something's cold. So something's like too hot or too cold, you just either freeze or get burned without any recollection of it. You know, very bad thing.
All in exchange for power.
Good
in
Lord,
that way, characters in Chainsaw Man don't really train in the traditional way to get stronger. They have to literally negotiate for strength.
More.
Pushing this devil-human connection further, you get fiends and hybrids.
Right.
When a devil possesses a human corpse, they become a fiend. And when a human fuses with a devil, they become a hybrid. In that way, fiends are devils forced into human lives, forced to learn what human empathy, emotion, and understanding feels like. Power is a great example of this. She begins the series primarily narcissistic and self-centered, and while these feelings aren't entirely erased, they're at least tempered with an outer shell of compassion and familial love. Hybrids are the exact opposite. Humans who must stave away devilish instincts and grapple with the corruption of their humanity. Yeah. Denji is left constantly wondering whether or not he even has a human heart. His sense of compassion, empathy, and justice are so corroded that we as the audience regularly watch him take actions that we cannot morally justify nor relate to. The system blurs the line between what it means to be human. The further you push yourself down the line of devils, the more power you gain, but the more of yourself you lose in the process. But by far, what makes Chainsaw Man's emotional power system the most interesting is how it isn't tied to a single individual. It's tied to the collective. In Chainsaw Man, fear, and by extension, your power, doesn't belong to you
Pulls up a clip of Power. I like that.
alone. It belongs to society. Devils don't grow stronger from private worries or nightmares. They grow from a shared societal panic. Guns, famine, control,
Darkness.
war. None of these are primal fears. They are products of the world we have built. And because the whole world fears them, these devils become unstoppable.
Right, yet it's not like starvation, drowning. You're not seeing those, bro.
When people stop fearing something, the devil weakens. And when the world panics, it grows stronger. Devils in that way represent our shared societal panic, and even our shared delusions of fear. With the advent of mass media, it's easier than ever to orchestrate fear towards problems that hardly exist in the first place, like has been done time and time again in the past,
I think they call that fear mongering.
and will be done time and time again in the future. Chainsaw Man reveals the very simple fact that as a society, the concepts that we fear are only so worrisome because we impose that dread onto them in the first place. We create issues in our minds, then conflate them further to the point that they actually have an anxiety-ridden effect on all of our lives. Fear is what keeps people alive. It's part of what makes
Shout out Monica from Troll Hunter, bro.
us human. But taken too far, it breeds control, exploitation, and violence. Shigeo Kageyama, better known as Mob, looks like a background character.
Looks like a goat.
But that's kind of the point. He's quiet, awkward, and often constantly blank-faced.
He like us for
But behind that mild expression and quaint disposition is the most powerful psychic on Earth. A walking emotional nuclear bomb just waiting to detonate. That is the premise of Mob Psycho. Mob's psychic powers are deeply connected to his emotions. Every time he suppresses his feelings, his anger, sadness, joy, anxiety, that energy builds up inside of him, slowly ticking upwards to 100%. And when he hits that breaking point, slowly ticking upwards to 100%. And when he hits that breaking point, his emotions take over completely. It's what happens when someone who's been holding everything in finally breaks. But why does he do this? As a kid, Mob loses control of his powers in an uncontrollable emotional outburst that seriously injures his brother and his bullies. It's a basic metaphor for losing control, whether that be through violent tendencies or toxic emotional outbursts. But either way, Mob decides in that moment that if he feels too much, he will hurt people he cares about.
Exactly.
So instead, I will live.
And that's why he lets himself live like a sad or flavorless life. Because if I live like that, everyone around me stays safe.
Of my life without my emotions. Mob tries to stay calm, to stay emotionless, to stay harmless. But as that percentage counter rises, the audience is not just stricken with a growing feeling of intrigue, they're also given visual information that Mob is growing closer to his emotional limit. Every bit of stress, happiness, or humiliation pushes him closer to that explosion. It's not just his power level rising, it's more importantly, his emotional stability collapsing. And what's brilliant about Mob Psycho is that 100% isn't always about anger. It's about whatever emotion he's suppressing. When he fights Teru, his rage hits 100% and a volcanic release of bottled anger and malice is released. When he experiences the illusions of years and suffering in the Mogami arc, it's 100% sadness. His grief violently reshapes the world.
And the interesting part is the way his 100% is displayed is different based on what emotion he's feeling
around him. When he faces Toichiro at the end of season 2, it's 100% compassion. His powers erupt not to destroy, but to save those ahead of him. The series uses explosions not just as victories, but as actual explorations of Mob's character. Each 100% is Mob learning to process a different emotion, and every time he breaks, he understands something about himself a little bit more. But there's one number even more terrifying than 100%.
Question marks?
That is, the side of Mob so deeply repressed that it doesn't even have a name. Is Mob's base self. Raw instincts and ego, the part of himself that Mob has spent his entire life denying. And
the problem is, it's like pressure. The more you compress it, the like, you know what I'm saying? The more pressure that's there, the less space that joint has, the more you confine it, the bigger and louder the explosion.
Same way as other inner demons, isn't an enemy to be exercised or destroyed. It's a part of him that must be accepted. Our emotions are not just things that you can seal away or ignore. I had to learn that the hard way a couple weeks ago. It is far better to confront your emotions and process them than to pretend that they don't exist. Or else, they'll eventually be the ones driving you, whether you're conscious to that fact or not. Mob Psycho 100 turns emotional repression into a literal superpower, and then spends 3 seasons dismantling that fact. It says that feelings aren't a weakness to be suppressed, they are fundamental truths to understand. Power without emotional honesty is just a disaster waiting to happen. And so the real measure of strength isn't how much you can lie to yourself about what you're feeling. It's about how you understand your own human emotions and what you do with that fact. In the end, all these worlds are built on the same simple truth. Power should be about more than just strength. It should also have a focus on our mentality and what we do with it. Jujutsu Kaisen represents the dangers of suppressing and misunderstanding our negative emotions, and how those feelings represent the dangers of suppressing and misunderstanding our negative emotions, and how those feelings can leak out and destroy others around us. It is only through self-realization that we are able to grow and mature as human beings. Chainsaw Man shows the chaos birthed from letting fear define everything around us, how our own worries can amplify the devils in our own lives, and the sacrifices people must make in order to come to terms with the world around them. Mob Psycho shows us the peace that comes from finally accepting yourself, as well as the chaos that comes from repressing your true emotions and letting them build up and explode inside of you. Each of these series...
I like the choice he made here, because some like Gurren Lagann, it's emotion's there, but like the series that he chose have direct relation to negative emotions or particular types of emotions. It's not as broad as a series like Gurren Lagann. As good as it is, just for the type of video he's making, shows like Gurren Lagann. There's another show I was just thinking about. Shows like I mentioned Naruto at the beginning of the recording. Even like shows like Fairy Tail, like emotions are there. He went for the shows where, like, the emotion being tied into the power system is narratively significant.
Take our human emotions and twist them into something divine, destructive, or restorative. Because the real question isn't how powerful your emotions make you feel. That's why series that equate rage to power are all basic and shallow. It should be more about whether you can handle what your emotions reveal about you, and whether you can regulate the truths that come with that.
I'll always say the man that can destroy a mountain but chooses not to is stronger than the man that, you know, can destroy a city and destroys that city every chance he gets. You know, restraint is stronger than power oftentimes. You know, you're afraid of your parents, the way they look at you a certain way when you're in trouble, not because they beat you every single day, not because they lecture you every single day, because when you do real wrong, you know a lecture's coming. That tension that's there, that presence of like that restraint has like aura to it. It's a little intimidating, right? If you don't do presentations and you're forced to present people you don't know, it's terrifying because you don't do it every day. But you do that every day for 30 days straight, that fear disappears. You know what I'm saying? It's like, by definition, restraint, the, you know, gaps between something, the space between when it occurs, gives it more significance. You know, if we seen diamonds every day, the market value of diamonds would go down. Diamonds aren't even the best jewel. Moissanite glows more than diamonds. Diamonds are just harder than moissanite. It's like, it's inverted. Moissanite sparkles the brightest and is the second hardest, while diamond is the second brightest and first hardest. The more of something you see, the less value it has, but whatever value you label on it is truly only there because it's supposed to be something that's not easy to obtain. If there weren't so many poor people, we wouldn't see money as such a crazy commodity. But you need it for everything. You see a $1 billion house, it's a $1 billion house, you don't see those every day. Similarly, that restraint, that choosing when your power surfaces will always be seen as more intimidating, more powerful, more strong in you as a person than that person who can't regulate their power.
That's why emotional-based power systems hit so hard. They're not just about lifting dumbbells and winning fights with monsters. Much more importantly than that, they're about winning the internal struggle that comes with being human. This video is proudly sponsored by GamerSub.
I respect it though.
If you're up for a while binging or like grinding ranked, this stuff is perfect.
I respect it because he threw it at the end, like at the exact end of the video. So I respect it. Shout out Pint is here and the little ghost of him that you can see as I'm doing this outro. And that was how emotions define great power systems. And I hope you guys think more about your emotions, what they mean, how they affect you and those around you. And as always, stay happy, healthy, and hydrated. I'll catch you guys in the next. Peace.